Everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at The Beast is Dead, drawn by Calvo and written by Victor Dansette. World War II Among the Animals. This book has a really interesting history behind it. So Calvo and Dansette were two Frenchmen living under the Nazi occupation of France, starting in June 1940. Around 1941, these guys on the down low, they started making this comic. And every now and then they'd show it to a few friends they could really trust. Because if this got out, they might be executed by the Nazis. Because this is very critical of Hitler and the Nazis. They slowly drew it and wrote it all through the war. And then in 1944, it was finally published. So World War II is still going on, but I'm pretty sure the Nazi occupation of France was over. I think they kicked out the Nazis. I can only imagine, because I can't imagine them publishing this if they were still, under the heel of the Nazis. Strangely enough, Calvo, just like Hergé, his day job was working for the Vichy government, doing children's comics for these little magazines. But they were run by the Nazis. So these magazines had to have anti-Jewish cartoons, anti-British, anti-American, anti-Russian. They were basically organs of the Nazi regime. And he worked for them. I mean, I guess he had no choice, but on the sly at night he was doing this. So I guess that kind of redeems him a little. So as we can see by this cover, Calvo's a really weird cartooning style. Very Disney-like, especially with his beautiful colors, painted colors. But he has these weird little touches. Look at his nose here. This is, the Great Wolf, obviously Adolf Hitler. I don't know what that is. It looks like some kind of claw hammer or some wood planer is where his nose should be. This whole thing almost looks like some weird prosthetic. No explanation why. His fur has holes in it, as if he's wearing a wolf suit, but he's not. He's a wolf. Just weird little touches like that are almost kind of disturbing. Everything's very cutesy, but they don't have these weird touches that are a little off, kind of creepy and weird, which makes me like it a lot more. We have a tiny little introduction from Albert Uderzo of Asterix fame. I guess he was an assistant. When he was a young lad, he was Calvo's assistant / apprentice. Here's the covers of the original editions. Same covers. This forward is from the Dutch edition of the book, translated by Charles Kingston. Here we are. For some reason, they have these black and white versions of the covers again. As a little bonus, they give us some of Calvo's other World War II cartoons. Departing shot. We see these troops testing a new cannon at rest. These troops doing tank maintenance before departure, showing all the goofy goings on at an airfield. This one is really weird. The first trials of the atomic bomb. This definitely shows off Calvo. Like everything is kind of humorously drawn. We see a man and a woman whose clothes have been blown off. And it's this funny, embarrassing moment. But then we see this scientist here still holding a beaker in one hand. His legs are completely chopped off. His head is chopped off. And his left hand is chopped off. Just really gruesome stuff. But everything else looks almost like Dr. Seuss could have drawn it, kind of zany silliness. Here, look at this. We see this torso just chopped off, and just guts are spilling out of it. And here's the top of him. And here's some heads looking at each other, what happened? They're still conscious. A foot, a hand. Oh, man, and just the way this building is warped. Yeah, Calvo's got some chops. Never seen anyone quite draw like him. Very interesting stuff. So here we start the story. We see this old grandpa, and he's telling his 3 grandchildren, you know, they say, tell us about your leg again, how you lost your leg. So he proceeds to tell them the whole story of World War II with all these funny animals. So, of course, this is, 40 years before Mouse. Of course, Mouse is way more intelligent than this. This is pretty boneheaded. It's pretty much just like propaganda. But it's just for the art. It's worth it. This art's amazing. Once again, we see a weird touch. Like, this grandfather looks like like half of his fur has been ripped off, or he's got this fur mask over half of his face. Don't know what that's supposed to be. Just very creepy and weird looking. But everything else is all jaunty and colorful and Disney-like. So the first few pages is just him telling these kids how idyllic the world was before World War II, before the Nazis rose to power. Everyone's happy. The French are rabbits. I guess there are other fellow Frenchmen. There's frogs. There's crickets giving a concert. I love the animated drawing style here. And the way he paints this mushroom. This thing is some serious eye candy. This whole book. I like this little lambkin. It's very cute. And this is another thing he does. Just amazing architecture. His backgrounds. He'll draw these twisty, windy, bendy, like tree roots and buildings. Kind of Dr. Seussian, Just nice stuff. So we just see more of this, idyllic pre-World War II scenes. And look at this. This guy is reminds me so much of Richard Scarry. Because, these trees are very Dr. Seuss, amazing, gnarled, crazy trees. But just how Richard Scarry would fill up a whole page with just random characters doing random things. I wish this was bigger. This is a big book. It's 9 by 12, this edition. But look at this. It's still so tiny. This needs to be 11 by 17 at least. There's so much going on here that I really can't even see some of the tinier things. I know I'm getting old and my eyes are going, but I don't know if a younger person could see it either. It's pretty tough. So then here we see a little note of foreboding. A bunch of the squirrel people are checking out. They go over to the land of Barbary where the wolves live. And the wolves are all like playing soldier. Looks like they're training for war. Everyone just thinks let them. If they get off on playing soldier, who cares? Nobody's that alarmed. Interesting that they've got these little slingshots instead of rifles, and they're practicing with catapults and slingshots. That's how they're training. And it's interesting, I'll tell you why later. Look at this crazy airplane. It's like a wooden airplane made in like a junior high shop class. Here we see the great wolf, Hitler, and he howls to the world, sowing terror among his neighbors. We see Goering, a big fat pig. We see Goebbels, the minister of propaganda. He's always in front of this microphone spewing lies. It keeps saying in the text that he's a skunk, and he looks nothing like a skunk. In the introduction, he does mention that he's a polecat, and that makes a lot more sense. I guess I should mention here, this translator is really bad. I can tell it's not the original writing, just because the diction is so off. You have to read sentences 3 times sometimes to know what he's saying. It's like, it's really garbled syntax. It's a sludge to go through this. It was tough reading this. I mean, the writing's basically like on the level of a children's book in the first place. But then with this bad translation, it wasn't fun reading this. Basically just looking at the art was the reason why I still have this in the Academy. I was actually looking it up on the internet. The cheapest copy I could find is $100. So I don't know. I might be selling this soon. It's really nice, but if I can get over $100 for this, I need the money. And once again, I never want to read it again. But, you know, it's an art book. I consider it like just a beautiful book of cartooning. So the Germans start their advance. They start mowing down people. So this is like Richard Scarry, but scary. Like, you actually see these rabbits being mowed down by they call them the caterpillar machines, you know, tanks. He kind of veils everything with cutesy names, you know. He'll never just say Russia. He always says the land of the bears. And almost like it's more fairy tale-esque. So we see the great wolf licking the polar bear's feet. This is the non-aggression pact that he made with Russia, so he could conquer Europe without any second front. Here we see Mussolini, a hyena in wolf's clothing. Like, I don't even know it just looks so weird. I know it's supposed to be a hyena in wolf's clothing, but it just looks like this, I don't know, surreal monster. Oh my God, I think I skipped a page. Nope, I didn't. Look at this craziness. Look at the sky here. The painting of this. This is the Maginot Line. You know, France built that big wall. And this shows the wolves just tearing it down. And look at that. This is like that scene in World War Z when the zombies climbed the wall in Jerusalem. It's nuts. I wonder how long this took him to paint this 2-pager. I don't know if I could sell this. I need some money so bad, but I don't want to get rid of this just for this art. So, you know, it's very propaganda-ish. So they basically make it seem like every single wolf / German is just duplicitous, evil. They'll stab you in the back. There's no good ones. Never trust any of them. And it shows all their little tricks they're doing. And the wolves are doing very good. And here we see the grandfather's a young man. He just lost his leg. Oh yeah, they call it the maggot line here instead of the Maginot Line. They have to make everything kind of funny animal-y. And he's in hospital. We see these French soldiers training with their slingshots. But man, look at that. I just love the way he draws these buildings all leaning into each other. Look at these weird guys. A lot of anthropomorphism here. But it changes, though. Sometimes it's like the backgrounds are kind of straight, and then sometimes it'll be like Beauty and the Beast. And a piece of crockery will have a face on it and be smiling. He kind of goes back and forth. So we see the Germans are taking over France. And France is losing badly. All the deprivations against, citizens of France, civilians. But then we see the bulldogs, the land of the bulldogs, the island of the bulldogs, obviously England. And he's talking about glowingly about how, you know, the bulldogs basically probably we wouldn't have won the war without them. It was their initial harsh resistance of the wolves that kept everyone going. Look at that. I don't know who these guys are supposed to be. The wild goats? I don't know if this is it looks snowy. Maybe this is in Denmark or not Denmark, one of those northern countries. Because they got the skis on. I know one of the northern countries like Norway, they fought the Nazis like on skis. They'd be skiing around with machine guns. So we see France is totally subjugated. And of course the Nazis are treating them all bad. Here we see the Maine bulldog. It's Winston Churchill with his big fat cigar in his mouth. And so Charles de Gaulle is a stork in here. But then they talk about other storks. So I don't get it. There's a lot of mixed metaphors in this comic. A lot of mixed analogies. It's not like Mouse, where it was all very calculated and thought through. I love this crazy train. It's like the Toonerville trolley, showing the Nazis plundering France. Yeah, so the Nazis are getting, I'm sorry, the wolves are getting harsher and harsher with the rabbits. Meanwhile, the bulldogs are holding fast, and they're kicking a little ass, but they're pretty much they're not doing too great against the wolves. Then we see here, this is what was that, 1940, when Hitler turned on Russia, and they started attacking Russia. And look at how happy that polar bear is. And all the soldiers, the polar bear soldiers, fight with hammer and sickles. Here we see the whole world. We see the buffaloes in America. We see the elephants in India, the dragons of China, the monkeys of Japan, the kangaroos of Australia. Here's the polar bears again. There's the English bulldog. And then he shows all these crazy planets and stuff. God's in heaven looking down, not doing anything like God usually does when there's strife in the world. So the buffaloes, that's us, that's the United States, they enter the fray. They start cranking up their factories, and they're ready to join the war. Which is, so that's definitely going to change things. So I guess there's a second part. I guess this was split up in two. So maybe the first part was 1944 and the second part was 45. That's why it says that on the front page. Cartooning seems to be getting even weirder. So the grandfather's still telling the tale to his grandkids. The hyena starts taking a licking. The Italians, the English are knocking him down a peg or two. Look at this. Here's Mussolini, the big hyena. He doesn't have his wolf's clothing on anymore, but he's got this weird Mussolini mask on. Let me see if you can, I'll push that up for you. That is weird. That is just like something from like a Junji Ito manga or something. It's just creepy and weird. We see the Belgians, the lions. So we go back to Russia. We see how that front is going. And the polar bears are doing pretty good, fighting back the Nazis. Now we're introduced to the monkeys, Japan. Yeah, not a very nice choice of animal. And we see the monkeys leapfrogging against all the South Pacific islands, gobbling them up, taking all the British territories and the American territories, and I guess some French territories too. France had some stuff there. So, Pearl Harbor happens. And the Americans, the buffaloes, they have a big war council and they're pissed off. It's interesting, he draws the buffaloes in their war council as looking like Native American chiefs. There's this one island, maybe it's Dutch New Guinea, because it's cows. and the monkeys are chasing him off. I hope you can see this okay on your screens. This is some lush stuff. Just look at this crazy painting. The sky here. So as the war is progressing, finally it looks like the wolves might not take over the world, because for a while there, people were really scared. It really looked like they were unstoppable. He also does an admiring portrait of the bears, how all their women went to work, and just how the whole country united as one to fight the Nazis. He's really talking about material in this, how, like, you know, a war is won by how much material you can make. That's why America entering the war was so important, not because, you know, our army was any bigger, but we could crank out tanks and planes and everything. And Russia was good at that too. Russia completely mobilized and really caught up to the Germans really quick. So this is what I was talking about earlier about the slingshots, why it's interesting. Because sometimes it's like, oh, we're going to make this into a kid's comic. And they'll have slingshots instead of guns. And, you know, it won't be as violent. But here we see now everyone's got guns. And this is a French Foreign Legion post in Africa. Some like last ditch attempt to fight off the wolves. They're outnumbered. This is, I guess, a famous battle. Maybe it's Alaman, I don't know. But look at this. The wolves are coming apart. But like this one, look how weird this is. It looks like a screw piece. Like this wolf was some kind of Russian doll that came unscrewed. So it's just so weird. It looks very violent. Then you look at it closer and you're like, oh, that's just weird. Because, you know, sometimes it does look like they're just dying or getting shot. But then sometimes he just does that. He's like, oh no, they're like dolls. It's very strange. But once again, I just love the scope of this 2-page spread, you know, cramming in all these figures. And so the English are down in Africa because they got Rommel down there. The wolves got Rommel, but they call him something else, of course. So I can't remember the general who fought Rommel, the English guy who kicked Rommel's ass. But that's him. They call him the skinny dog. I don't know where this place is in the South Pacific, but it's called the Land of Guitars. You see these little guitars with grass skirts. I don't know if they meant like ukulele, so it's like Hawaii maybe. There's a stork again. I don't even understand. The stork, you know, de Gaulle was like hiding. He was just like, but they act like he was a big figure in the war. And I guess he was, I mean, but still, this is written by French guys, so they really play up the French resistance. And really, I mean, yeah, they helped, but not much compared to the Russians and the Americans and the British. Once again, they play up how great it is that in England during this time, women did all the grunt work because there was no men around. So bringing up coal from the mines, directing traffic, just doing all these typical male roles, and they did it bravely and well. Of course, when the soldiers came home, they all kicked them out of their jobs that they proved themselves very good at. This is, I don't know what the hell's going on in this panel. Well, there's Goebbels, and it looks like this monkey is spitting through his ear. I don't know, but I like how weird it is. So it looks like the Allies are doing better. Oh man, look at this. This is Stalingrad. This is nuts. Look at this building. It's so demolished, but it's still just like a Jenga, a crazy Jenga thing. Oh man, that's nuts. back in Africa with the French army in exile. I love this spread where they're just jumping over these crazy mountains, climbing down ropes. This is very Richard Scarry here. They're all climbing down ropes to convene down there, which could have been drawn so just, typically, but he turns it into this giant romp, this fun, crazy thing. Like, I'm sure, oh man, I can imagine if I was a little kid reading this book. Maybe my parents wouldn't let me have it because of the violence, but something like this, I would have just stared at this for half a day. Got my tracing paper out, tried to draw it and stuff. So this is kind of weird too. Of course, they don't mention this kind of stuff. But all the French territories, when they kick the Nazis out, the people who live there, they make it seem like they're all thrilled. It's just like, no, the French basically did to you what the Nazis are doing to everyone else. They're not so thrilled to have their old overlords back instead of these other overlords. So it's like, they don't mention that though. That these guys were pretty much like all colonial powers who were like the Nazis to these people and decimated them. So Mussolini's really on his last legs. He's pleading with Hitler to help him. Hitler's like, I don't got time for you. I got my own problems. This is very Seussian. This is Italy. But it's drawn like a chubby leg. But it's like a hollow leg. And like, so the hole in the shoe, like a shoe, it's just very odd. Maybe it's a prosthetic leg, I don't know. So the buffaloes are invading the land of the hyenas, which of course is well fortified by the wolves at this point. The wolves kind of took over Italy from the hyenas. We see more of the cruelty of the wolves because some of the French are getting a little bold now that the wolves have been taking a licking here and there. So more of the resistance is coming out and openly fighting the wolves. So the wolves are just torturing them. And here's the Danes. It's a Great Dane. That's another weird thing about the writing. It kind of jumps around. But then again, this was written during the war. So he didn't know how the war was going to end. Or he didn't know what was going to be important or less important or more important. So it makes sense. But it does seem to like, I don't know. It's not very linear. There's the stork again. So it's almost like he's his own animal. Even though there's other storks, I don't know, maybe de Gaulle is from a certain area of France, and that's what they're saying are the storks. I'm not sure. Once again, the French reclaiming one of their Arabic, colonies. And this is kind of interesting. You can't see the faces of these people, so maybe they're not so happy. Maybe they're like, oh, well, the Nazis are gone, but it's our old overlords are back. Sometimes it's so Disney, or just any classic cartoon animation company from the 30s. Another crazy panorama here. These leopards, I assume, are an Arabic country that France owned. And they're beating up the wolves. Oh, and then it continues here. There's a lot of text in here. Some people might argue this isn't necessarily a comic, but it's that whole Prince Valiant debate. Is Prince Valiant a comic or isn't it? Is it a heavily illustrated short story? This is way more, less sequential than Prince Valiant. Bigger blocks of text. But I don't know, just this way it's set up. I'm going to call this a comic. So say we all. So, yep. Things are going good for the Allies. Look at this. Holy shit. And like within this, like this amazingly photorealistic plane, fighter plane. And these wolves are en route. Look at all these just bombed out houses. Just so amazingly detailed. This is the V-1 bomber. It looks like a giant bat. You know, that's the wolves, their last-ditch attempt to destroy the land of the bulldogs. Look at this craziness. You know, things are almost mopped up. The great wolf is freaking out. He knows his days are numbered. The polar bears are coming in from the east, and the bulldogs and the buffaloes are coming in from the west. He tells this weird anecdote. I imagine it's based on a real story, where this prisoner, this French prisoner, rabbit prisoner, he was on a train, and these wolves had to run out to take care of some insurgents. And he found a bottle of rum, this rabbit, and he found a loaded machine gun and just mowed down most of the wolves. And after every round or cartridge or whatever you call it, every belt of ammunition, he took a swig of rum. So I guess this was a famous story of heroism in World War II. This drunk guy just killed 50 wolves while he was totally drunk on rum. The retreating wolves are just taking everything they can grab. They're looting. Oh, look at this. This is the French rabbits getting their groove on. Finally united, finally openly fighting the Nazis and kicking them out. And here we see their victory parade. This is very Richard Scarry here. So many characters, all doing different goofy things. All dressed differently. I don't know really what's going on in here, but I really like it. It's a very weird story. It's obviously some anecdote from World War II, but I didn't quite get it. Yeah, more about the Belgians, the Lions. Talking about what they went through. This looks like he's tooting his own horn because he says that the Belgians, or was it the French? No, I guess it's the Belgians. They published a fake newspaper, like a satirical newspaper. And of course the Nazis were incensed. They didn't like it. But they snuck it onto the newsstands. And he thinks, he acts like this is worthy of a panel of all these battles. But he's a cartoonist, so of course I'm sure he maybe contributed, where he could be like, see, we fought too in our own way with satire. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm sure that helped a lot. And we wrap it up with the grandfather, and he's telling his kids the story, his grandkids. And see, this is what all of a sudden, these things are anthropomorphized. The sugar bowl, everything, the desk even. So it's just very odd how he just changes styles. Sometimes it's a kid's comic with fake weapons. Sometimes it's got total machine guns blowing people's heads off. Very strange cartoonist. Oh, I should show you the back cover. It's almost like a before and after. So now he's got this weird eye patch on. His nose is looking even weirder. His feet, claws are coming out from his feet. I'm sorry, his shoes. His shoes are all ripped. So he looks even more grotesque here. So that's it. The Beast is Dead. Beautiful hardcover. Really sturdy book. I got this in, I think when I was back then in the 80s, I think I bought this. Maybe not. Maybe I bought it at one of the bookstores I worked at the time. But I always remember seeing it in Bud Plant catalogs and always be intrigued. And once I saw how beautiful the art was inside, I definitely had to buy it. Looks like I bought it for $6 at the time. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, even though the writing is god-awful. But you didn't have to read it. I wish somebody just showed me the art and gave me a synopsis. You're lucky. But, yeah, Calvo and Dansette. Calvo went on to be a sculptor. Or maybe he was before this as well. And he was a caricaturist. Just a big cartoonist in France. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.